Hello everyone. Today we're going to dive into one of the most extreme and bizarre phenomena in economic history, hyperinflation. What exactly is hyperinflation, and how could someone buy a house with just a bunch of bananas? Let's explore some of the craziest stories related to this. Hyperinflation, have you heard of it? Normally, inflation increases by a few percent per year, but hyperinflation? That's on a whole different level. Prices can skyrocket within days, or even hours. It's an economic disaster that can utterly destroy a country's financial system. Hyperinflation is a phenomenon where the value of a country's currency plummets so rapidly that prices soar out of control. We're not just talking about prices doubling or tripling. In the worst cases, they can increase by hundreds or even thousands of times. Let's look at some real-life examples of hyperinflation. The most famous case is from the 1920s in Germany, during the Weimar Republic. After World War I, Germany faced massive war reparations, which led to runaway inflation. At its worst, people had to carry wheelbarrows full of money just to buy a loaf of bread, and this isn't a joke. People literally used money as fuel to heat their homes because it was worth more as kindling than as currency. Another notable example comes from Zimbabwe in the early 2000s. Zimbabwe's economy collapsed, and hyperinflation hit so hard that the government issued a 100 trillion Zimbabwean dollar note. That was barely enough to buy a loaf of bread. Now let's talk about the main story. Buying a house with a bunch of bananas. Sounds absurd, right? But this actually happened, and it's a striking example of what can occur during hyperinflation. The country in question? Venezuela. Venezuela, despite having one of the largest oil reserves in the world, suffered a devastating economic collapse in the mid-2010s due to poor government policies and the drop in oil prices. As a result, inflation soared beyond control, and people couldn't afford basic necessities. The situation got so bad that money became practically worthless, and people turned to bartering instead. In some instances, items like bananas, potatoes, and even livestock became more valuable than cash. And this is where we get the infamous story of someone trading a bunch of bananas for a house. Because bananas had more practical value than the rapidly devaluing Venezuelan bolivar, some people in rural areas resorted to trading food for real estate. While this may seem like an extreme example, it perfectly illustrates the absurdity of hyperinflation. So, what can we learn from these extreme cases of hyperinflation? The most important lesson is the need for sound economic and monetary policies. If a government loses control over its currency, the consequences can be disastrous, as these historical examples show. Even today, many countries are carefully managing inflation, especially in the wake of the recent global pandemic. Inflation is a hot topic as nations try to balance economic recovery with price stability. These lessons from history remind us how vital it is to maintain economic stability. Today, we looked at some of the craziest examples of hyperinflation, including the ridiculous story of trading a bunch of bananas for a house. These stories highlight just how vulnerable economies can be, and how important it is to avoid such extreme situations. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more fascinating economic stories. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.